allow me to offer my greeting. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good evening, early evening to our friends in the Middle East. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. I hope you're all well. Good to see you. We have some questions, JC. JC's in the room this evening, so I'm looking that way. Dear Ajahn, please help me strengthen my ability to forgive. A precious Dharma friend's actions hurt me a few years ago so deeply that the echo of the pain is still present. I have offered prostrations, dedications, sutta chanting, and metta. The blockage has lessened considerably, but I'm still unable to fully trust this person. I would appreciate your insight and advice with respect and gratitude. I think forgiveness is a process. So we can see the pain of holding onto a grudge. We can see the pain of having a heart that feels closed towards somebody. And then one of the main reasons to forgive is to not have that painful feeling in one's own heart, clearing out grudges and making sure that space is wholesome, not holding on to one of the root kilesas of hatred. So the grudge, resentment, anger is all in the aversion spectrum of the root kilesa of hatred. So we don't want to hang on to it. But it's a process, because if you were hurt very deeply, then one tends to remember, and then it's kind of a process of feeling hurt and offended again. Then the mind gets holds a bit averse and can go into grudge again. And we have to keep reminding ourselves that I'm forgiving this person. One of the most helpful, I found, reflections for forgiving others is a reflection on karma. So a lot of our story is based on the perspective of this lifetime that we have. It's quite narrow lens. If we truly understand that in terms of the deep hurts of this lifetime, we set the causes in motion for those, normally in previous lives. So when somebody hurts you deeply, you have right view, as how Buddhists understand it, skillful, conventional right view. We believe in karma. You would not feel deeply hurt had you not deeply hurt people. So I find that reflection for myself is humbling. It's like the blaming mind. It does something to the blaming mind. Well, okay, I can't really blame this person. This person was the channel through which karma ripened. But I set in motion that karma previously. So if I can blame them, I can be angry at them, I can make more negative karma. And then I will have more painful experiences in the future. So when we really reflect on that, when we stop blaming other people for our painful experiences, it's easier to forgive them. Okay, I don't want to add more negativity to negativity. I don't want to add more painful experiences to my painful experience. I don't want to invest in that. And so it's a process. And with regards to trust, however, this is an important nuance to understand. I guess it's an English saying, isn't it? Forgive and forget. When we are living with wise discernment, discriminating wisdom, we don't forget. So if somebody was actually harmful to you, did something unskillful, painful, they did direct negativity towards you, one accepts that as one's karma, one forgives them. That means you're not holding a grudge, but you don't forget. Trust is a different issue. You don't have to trust somebody who has proved to you that they don't deserve it. And this is an area of nuanced reflection. We need to do some inner work there. Completely forgive somebody and completely distrust them. It's possible. And this is if somebody hurts you again and again, and okay, in this lifetime, this person appears to be someone who I really can't trust. Now, I'm not going to aim any hatred or negativity at them, but maybe I don't answer their text message. Maybe I don't pick up their phone call. Maybe they come around knocking on the door. I don't open the door. That's your choice. So we have a choice who we associate with. We have a choice who we choose to be our friends. We often don't have a choice who our family members are, of course. And we don't have a choice who our neighbors are oftentimes. But, sometimes we have choice and we can have healthy, clear, strong boundaries. Forgive, have loving kindness. But if sometimes people have a mental illness. Sometimes people have an addiction. So people have issues. And we might need to have firm boundaries with people. If it's not that extreme, then it's just a matter of how close you allow yourself to become to that person. Now, if a person is mindful of the harmful thing they did, and if the person asks forgiveness and asks to be trusted again, I think it's nice to give people another chance. If they're taking responsibility for the negativity that affected their mind, give people another chance. And again, if they demonstrate again that they're not trustworthy, then you don't have to keep giving them chances either. So forgive, don't forget. Forgive, you don't have to trust. Forgive and wish them well, and also I think it's nice to have some nuance, like, yeah, in the future, if they change within this lifetime, we can renegotiate these boundaries. Or next lifetime. I'm not closing my heart to this person until the end of samsara. If they manifest, because one of the ways they teach loving kindness in the Tibetan tradition, one of the ways to cultivate impartial and boundless loving kindness for all beings everywhere, is to understand that everyone who is your friend now in the past has been your enemy at some point. And also within this lifetime, friends can become enemies or people who we didn't like. We have some experiences in our life changes, we understand them better. Sometimes people you didn't like became friends. And so we contemplate the fact that these categories, friend, neutral person, enemy, or difficult person, these are changing. They're fluid. They're not static. And so if someone appears to be untrustworthy, we can have that sense of, okay, I'm not going to trust you for a period of time. Keep an eye on you. If you change, we can renegotiate the boundaries. If not this lifetime, if I'm not yet liberated, maybe next lifetime, we can be friends again. And you wish them well. And it's an interesting phrase. May I be well, may I be happy. May this person be well, may this person be happy. When we wish these people well, we're also wishing that they're able to contain and then let go of their negative qualities. So it's like you can very, very sincerely wish them well, being aware of what the fault is, what the character weakness is, and really wish that they see that with clarity and wisdom and are able to go beyond it so that they will become a trustworthy being. You don't have to ignore a person's negativities when you wish them well. That's part of wishing them well, that they be free from these things, as we wish that for ourselves also. Dear Ajahn, how can one deal with the dispassion and dukkha that arises deeply when looking at the suffering of the animals and other beings around? Even helping them as much as possible is not enough to calm the mind down. So, when we cultivate the four Brahma-vihara, there are the near enemy and the far enemy. So qualities which obstruct our cultivation of the Brahma-vihara, stop them from being pure. When it comes to compassion, I think the far enemy is hatred, like not having compassion, having aversion instead. The near enemy is personal distress. So if you feel personally distressed by the suffering of other beings, that's something which is affecting the purity of your compassion. Now, of course, it's difficult when one is really sincere about cultivating compassion, opening one's heart. The thing about compassion is it makes you sensitive to suffering. So cultivation of loving kindness and compassion actually makes you sensitive to the fact of suffering in yourself and others, sensitizes the heart, opens the heart. But we need to have the wisdom component that helps keep our Brahma Viharas balanced, and that's the understanding of karma. And then the equanimity, Brahma Vihara. I think the only way, well, yes, one reflects on karma, but in my experience, it's just a lot of practice, because you need your center, you need some ability to bring the mind inwards and stay calm and stay centered while being aware of suffering in oneself and others. It's probably an aspect of samadhi. So you need enough samadhi, which is stability of mind, to not be that affected by suffering. And that actually comes from trying to meditate with distress in the mind and practicing patient endurance until the distress kind of calms down. So the only way we can really develop more stability, more centeredness, more calm is by meditating more, in my experience. So when I went to India for the very first time, that would have been 21 years ago, landing in Bihar and getting off at the Gaya airport at 4 in the morning, seeing all these very, very thin people and not much light in their eyes, sleeping on the railway platform with no mat or anything, and freezing cold temperatures. Coming from Australia and coming and living in Thailand, I actually hadn't seen anything like that my whole life. There's no meat on their face, no light in their eyes, and it was a shocking moment for me on several levels, because as a renunciant monk stepping out of that plane with my lovely group of faithful students and friends, I was shockingly aware in that moment that I was rich and fat, even though I was a renunciant, because compared to what those people had, I had much more. And I spent about 7 weeks in India. It was my first trip, and most of that time was in Gaya and other areas in Uttar Pradesh. India has developed quite a bit since then. And in general, people seem to have a lot more meat on their bones, and see people smiling more. It seems like everybody has a mobile phone, even the poor people. So it changed a lot. But I remember when I came back to Thailand, I was depressed for about 2 months. So just processing the sheer amount of poverty and difficulty and harshness. I'd had the insight that if I spent my entire life trying to help the people under the poverty line in India, 300 million of them, that I wouldn't be successful. And it was a very sad thought. I could spend my whole life trying to eradicate hunger in India and I would fail. It's just kind of the sense of the scale of dukkha. And there's kind of a process of just accepting, yeah, this is how bad it is. It is this bad. Samsara is unsatisfactory. There is dukkha. The Buddha's first noble truth. You can't make this place perfect. The karma of billions of beings is powerful. So I asked my teacher, what caused these people to be born in this state? And Ajahn said, having stolen in past lives, or having been very stingy. If they had resources that they could share, they didn't share them. with regards to the people who had leprosy and people who had missing noses, missing ears, missing fingers, various things one saw when people were begging, hands in your face. And, one other master told me that many of those people were the people who were chopping off the noses and breaking off the hands and lobbing off the ears of the Buddha statues during the Mughal Turkish invasions of India 1,000 years ago. And then it makes sense. So if you've been attacking priceless artwork and killing people and plundering, burning down things, that's all of the kind of things that happen when there are invasions. We can see it happening in our world now. This is the kind of thing that happens in samsara, and beings make very heavy and difficult karma for themselves. So we just have to process, I think, how bad it is. And it's a process of admitting that. It's like, yeah, it's really bad. If apparently most beings are in hell, we can't see them. But it's like samsara is like a pyramid. Most beings are in the hell realms, not even aware of those ones. Those ones have worse suffering than the animals and the poor people that we can see. And then humans kind of in the middle. And then, up when you get to the Brahmas and the Pure Lands, it's less and less beings percentage wise. So that's where we are. Samsara is an unsatisfactory place, a sad place. So we have to take that on the chin, process it, and that is part of what makes equanimity possible. It's simply accepting nature, accepting things as they are without being contentious, without liking and not liking. And it's perfectly possible to have a lot of compassion. You really wish beings well. And if your compassion is powerful and pure, the power of your compassion will affect beings around you in a good way, and you will probably do more and more good things that help people. But you don't have to be personally distressed. And whether you are personally distressed or not will depend upon how much samadhi and how much wisdom you have as well. So it's a process, and I wish you every success in the process. And I think in looking at it in a positive light, I think it's better to be a person who has a sensitive mind who cares than to be someone who is insensitive and doesn't care. So it's a good spot to be starting from. And I hope that your compassion gets purer, your samadhi gets more stable, your wisdom deepens, and your compassion grows, and that you're able to help more and more beings in a more sustainable way. Dear Ajahn, I am a Reiki master. I heard briefly somewhere that you were not a fan of Reiki. Would you please explain why? Thanks. So I don't personally have an issue with Reiki. I think Reiki is a healing art. People learn how to, I believe, channel healing energies from the heavens or from the universe, and some people become powerful healers. The concern I have about it is, like, if I want to be working with some devas, I want to be able to see them. I want to be able to know what's their worldview. Because if I'm opening up my mind to some energies outside of myself and I don't completely know where it's coming from, and I also want to know, am I developing a kind of an indebtedness to these beings? Is there some kind of an account functioning somewhere that I don't have access to? Who's got the credit? Who's got the debit? Who's making more merit? Yeah, so my concern about it is I don't know absolutely who the ascendant masters or the Reiki masters are, what realm they're living in, what their long-term agenda is. I don't know. So I have those concerns. Am I making myself, when I invoke them, am I putting myself in a kind of a partnership with them that is going to have to play out over many lifetimes? What kind of an agreement am I making? Where's the contract? Can I see the fine details, please? So in Thai massage, I used to study Thai massage before I was a monk, and we actually used to invoke Dr. Shivaka, Gatha a chant to Dr. Shivaka, who was Lord Buddha's teacher, Lord Buddha's doctor in the time of the Buddha, who had a mango grove. So I felt fine about praying to Dr. Shivaka, who was the Buddha's doctor. And there was another prayer that we used to do to Kuan Yin, Bodhisattva of compassionate mercy. So I felt fine about doing those two invocations because I trust those sources. I felt fine about opening my mind and connecting to those influences. Similarly, I once received a medicine Buddha empowerment from the 14th Dalai Lama. And if it's blessings that's coming from a Buddha, celestial Buddha, I'm okay with that. Bless me, Buddhas. But I don't know who the Reiki masters are. And so that's my reservation. But in general, if somebody wants to give their time and energy to helping others relieve themselves from pain and illness, I would rejoice in that. I hope that answers your question to some degree. Interesting question. I think this question will be relevant to about 3% of my listening audience, but it's interesting to me. And to those of you who have celibates as your teachers, might be interesting to know a little bit about what we do, what we don't do, and why. Dear Ajahn, I sometimes feel that celibacy is drying up my heart in the sense that there isn't so much affective connection with beings. On some occasions, when I get to see people in a loving relationship, I sometimes feel I'm missing out on that part of life. Although I do experience some of the benefits of maintaining celibacy, such as being more contented, having a mind that is more focused on the practice, having more clarity, inner serenity, and things like this. Can you please shed some light so as to help me overcome this matter? Thank you. Celibacy, what a rich and wonderful subject. You don't think that, do you? You don't think celibacy rich and wonderful. You think celibacy boring. When I was a young monk, I think I was in my second pansa, I said to Ajahn Jayasaro, Ajahn Jayasaro, this celibacy life, it sure has its challenges. I'm like, he was the abbot of Wat Nanachala at the time. I says, what do you do to feel virile and powerful? I said to him, I used to like go to the beach at midnight and go skinny dipping, felt really alive and make passionate love. And here I am. Oh, everything is kind of limp and saggy. What do you do to actually feel virile and powerful? And he looked at me like I was a stick creature. Like, what a strange insect. What's he talking about? Because he'd been committed to the celibacy life for nearly 20 years at that point. And so there are, I just say that to mention that I did struggle more with it in my earlier years. And but I think the reason it wasn't an issue for Ajahn Jayasaro, of course, was he had just had one of his Dharma talks had become a book, and his book had become a bestseller, even though it was available for free distribution, of course, but it had become the equivalent of a bestseller in Thailand because it was such a beautiful teaching. And the teaching was, he'd been a backpacker and he'd been traveling through Iran, I believe, and it may have been Iraq, that area. And he didn't have much money and he wasn't kind of clean and tattered and disheveled and emaciated to some degree. And a woman saw him in the side of the street or in the market or something and just kind of with sign language said, follow me home. And he'd followed her home and she pointed to the bathroom. He had a shower. I think she washed his clothes. She made him a dinner. And he remembers being so touched by that this woman that he didn't know, complete stranger, fed him, allowed him to bathe, let him rest, cleaned his clothes. And then he left and he was thinking back with what the kindness of this stranger and how touched he was. But then he had the insight that his mother had done that for him for 18 years. And he was like, very, very touched by, oh, wow. I mean, that lady was really kind, but compared to the kindness of my mother. And so he wrote a book. He gave a talk and that became a book, and that was very popular among Thai people. So I think the reason Ajahn Jayasaro wasn't struggling in the same way that I was, the 40-year-old Ajahn So compared to the 25-year-old Tanachalo, was that he had developed qualities that he could feel some wholesome pride and dignity about. You know, he had mastered the Thai language. Many people said he speaks Thai better than Thai people. Still, many people say that to this day. And he was becoming a kind of respected, famous Ajahn, and his teachings were having a positive effect on, tens of thousands of people's lives. So for him, he had powerful wisdom. He had a powerful ability to affect people in a positive way. And I'm sure he had some samadhi, some insight. And so for myself, as my celibate life has progressed, I'm looking to close to 30 years of celibacy now, I can see that I do think having hobbies is important. So this person is a lay person, I think probably in their 20s. I think having, Luang Por Nun says that monks should have a hobby. Sometimes practice goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well. But if you have skills that you're developing over time in a disciplined way, it's one of the blessings in the Mangala Sutta. Is one of the highest blessings is to have craftsman's skills. If you really develop a craft. So for myself, as you know, I started painting lotuses and peonies, etc. about 18 months ago. I've been quite disciplined. It got better. I have a wholesome sense of pride about my lotuses 18 months into it. Probably my abilities as a teacher over the past 15 years have improved a little. Then things like that, building a monastery, my ability to design a building, oversee its construction, and create a monastery. There are things that I can recollect. I'm writing a new book now. I think my abilities to write probably getting a little bit better also. And there's this sense of, okay, I'll work on this hobby. I'll get in a disciplined, focused way, keep plodding, but keep working. It gets better. The meditation gets better. The skills of an abbot get better. The skills of a teacher get better. The hobbies get better. If you keep plodding and you don't give up and you're genuinely disciplined, then you end up developing a bunch of skills and accomplishing a number of wholesome things. And then you feel more contentment and happiness with your life. And then I think the craving for other things to fill that space is less when you can fill that space with your own goodwill towards yourself, or your own wholesome sense of pride from being a good person who has accomplished some things. But I think another thing that's important to understand is samsara only gets so good, and you can't have everything. And also, when you're seeing people being, so I think it's fair enough to acknowledge that when you practice celibacy, you don't get to hold hands and hug and kiss cheeks and have a cuddle as you're falling asleep. You don't get to do that. All right, okay, you don't. But, and there is some feeling of you don't have as much intimacy, physical touch as you used to. Yeah, fair enough. But this person has said, I do see some of the benefits when you look at the last part of that question. Could you bring that up again, JC, the second page? Having a mind that is more focused on the practice, I have more clarity, I have more inner serenity. Can you please shed some light on this? So many people challenged with focusing on the practice, and so many people have challenged clarity, and very few people have inner serenity in the world. So sometimes we don't quite recognize the value of those things. As a Buddhist monk, when I hear you say you have clarity, inner serenity, and focus on the practice, well, what's my response? Sadhu. I don't care if you're not having tender, intimate moments. But what I would encourage you, as I always do, when we cultivate loving kindness for more and more beings, your capacity to feel tender and intimate with eventually all beings, that grows. So if we're really diligent in our metta practice, you can feel a connection with a great number of beings, which is very, very sincere. And you can have a great deal of love in your heart, but it's a pure love, an unconditional love, an impartial love, and a quality of love that will support the development of insight. So I guess the other thing I need to say about celibacy is for it to be successful, I don't think most people realize how tight a container these celibate monks are living within. Celibacy in our tradition precludes masturbation. I don't know if people knew that. So one can't look at pornography, for example, and release the pressure if it builds up. One has to learn how to sublimate. It's a very nice word. How to take the energy of raw, passionate lust and bring it up into the higher chakras, often with patient endurance, stomping up and down on a walking meditation, and but also the contemplations that Lord Buddha gave us, the contemplating the body parts, contemplating the body as elements. I sometimes feel compassion and sorry for the celibate people of other traditions who were not given the same tools as us and who end up making big mistakes. You can't just decide. There's a very interesting phrase in a chant that we chant after the Patimokkha. A laxed holy life stirs up the dust of the passions even more. A holy life lived with laxity stirs up the dust of passions even more. Why? Because you've got all this spare time to think about, to have unskillful fantasies if you're not being diligent. So for celibacy to be successful, it has to be complete celibacy. No, you can't give it an inch, as it were. And you do have to develop skills at skillful distraction. That's, again, your hobbies, your wholesome activities can be helpful. And then a lot of monks, a lot of young monks in the forest tradition are involved in building the actual monasteries. A lot of lusty young men have mixed a lot of concrete, and which became monasteries. And so it's like there's ways to channel physical energy in a way that is skillful. And I think for myself as a teacher, I don't know how this person's life will progress in future decades, but for myself as a teacher in my 50s now, with 2 decades of teaching experience, I know people who are like brothers and sisters and long-term students, aunties and uncles, and I feel genuinely close to these people. I don't feel that my life is lacking in tender, warm relationship, but that's the relationship of teacher with student. And it's very nice. My life, I have enough love in my life. I don't feel dry or shriveled, but I do have a cat and I cuddle my cat. So, maybe you need a cat. So anyway, I hope something I said was helpful, and may you all enjoy the fruits of the celibate life at some point. Dear Ajahn, as a layman, is there anything we can do to protect ourselves, such as chanting a mantra perhaps, against imminent dangers from people with evil intentions, like money lenders coming to demand payments? So I think the real problem here was lending money from people who were not trustworthy, who were, dangerous potentially. That's the problem. I do believe that that's a karmic act, isn't it? When you borrow money from people who will send around the debt collectors if you don't pay it back, that's when you got yourself in trouble. And maybe you had good reason, maybe you didn't feel you had a choice. Yes, the chanting can be protective. We call the Paritta chants the protective chants. But we also have to live skillfully and make wise choices. And yeah, it's worth a try, isn't it? And if you can borrow some money from somebody who is trustworthy and pay off the debt collectors, then pay off the person that you borrowed the money from, then that might be a good strategy if you have that as an option. So the metta chant, the Karaniya Metta Sutta, Lord Buddha taught the 28 Buddhist chant. It was actually a yaka. A yaka came to see the Buddha, and this kind of a celestial giants in a parallel realm. And the chief of the yakas told Lord Buddha that some of his disciples were ill-disposed toward the bhikkhus, some of his following, and despite his urging them to behave properly, there was still some threat that the yaka may not be nice to the bhikkhus. And the yaka told a chant to the Buddha and recommended that the Buddha teach it to his bhikkhus to protect them from yakas. So that chant is called the 28 Buddhas chant. And that's probably the best one to go for if you have yaka in human form coming after you. Ajahn, may I know the difference between offering forest cloth and Kathina cloth? So in Thailand, there is a tradition which is called Ottapa, which is the offering of cloth. It literally translates as the offering of forest cloth. So the lay people will come and they actually offer a kind of a small tree which has a cloth on it, and the monk takes the cloth from the tree in the ceremony. But the origin of this ceremony comes from the time of the Buddha, where Lord Buddha, when the corpses were wrapped in cloth and were dropped off at the charnel ground in this cloth and left to rot oftentimes, or burned, and the cloth was taken off the corpse and placed on a tree because people were aware that summoners may come and take them. And so it was made allowable by the Buddha for the monks and nuns to go to the charnel ground and collect these pieces of cloth, wash them, make a patchwork robe out of the cloth from the charnel ground. So the taking the cloth from the forest comes from that origin. But the lay people in Thailand have a tot papa where they offer forest cloth and the monk gets to pull the cloth off the tree. It's just a quaint tradition that we have, and that can be offered at any time of the year. The Kathina, and offering a papa is normally is more like a fundraiser that there will often be a particular project and a layperson wants to include other people in the project. And so they'll announce that there's this offering of forest cloth on this day, and people will come and contribute to the occasion and offer some funds as well if they want to. The Kathina offering ceremony has to be offered during the Kathina season, which is 1 month after the end of the rainy season retreat. And for the monks to be able to receive the Kathina cloth, you need to have had 5 bhikkhus spend a retreat together for a period of 3 months. And then somebody has to want to offer the Kathina, and then we can have a Kathina ceremony, and that is more rare. It happens at that 1 month after Pansa, where there've been 5 bhikkhus together for a period of time. So that's the difference. Okay. Last question. Dear Ajahn, is it useful to seek forgiveness every time when we make any physical offerings to the Sangha? Example, medicine, food, or shelter. Is seeking forgiveness like a reminder for us to be guided by Hiri and Ottapa? So in general, how it's practiced in Thailand is there will be certain times when we ask forgiveness. So the Songkran, which is the Thai New Year, would be a time where the laity come and ask forgiveness, normally of the Sangha. And another time would be the birthday of one of your teachers. That would be traditionally a time that you would come and pay respects, make offerings, ask forgiveness. And the thing about the forgiveness ceremony is that it's a two-way thing. Like in the statement that the bhikkhu makes when the students ask forgiveness of them, the students ask forgiveness for by body, speech, and mind for whatever wrong action has been made, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally. I ask forgiveness. And then the bhikkhu responds with, I forgive you. And similarly, anything I may have done which caused offense, please forgive me. So it's a very beautiful, graceful kind of a dance. And I think it's an important thing to do because the nature of delusion and the nature of karma and the nature of the way things keep changing in society, you may have a harmonious relationship now with no issues, but just the way life goes, there may be some issues in the future. And so when you practice, you have this practice of going and asking forgiveness and receiving forgiveness. And you're also practicing forgiving your teacher if you perceive him to have done something wrong. You've developed this capacity to ask forgiveness and receive forgiveness. It's a very good skill to have. And and it may be needed at some point in your relationship with your teachers, because only the Buddha had no more latencies all other beings have their latent tendency, the latent character type, and so not everybody will appreciate the kind of character tendencies of the monks. Some people might like them, other people don't like them. The very same thing. Some people like and other people don't like. That's very common. But we have to, it's not, in general, it's not good to have a fault-finding, hypercritical mind towards people who are virtuous, that generally speaking, we can get kind of too fault-finding with our ajahns. But also, you do have to keep your head on your shoulders, and you do have to notice, because sometimes in this day and age, monks and nuns can go off, and you need to be paying attention. Are they actually going off here, or is it just an aspect of the personality that I find irritating, or not towards my aesthetic preference? In terms of their monastic rules, are they keeping their rules? In terms of their meditation discipline, are they following through on their meditation? In terms of benefiting beings, are they benefiting beings? If they still tick those boxes, I would be careful with fault-finding mind. And so, yes, asking forgiveness is good, because it just reminds us, yes, this is a person practicing higher virtue, and it's good to clean the slate, forgive them, forgive myself, be forgiven by them. But should one do it every time? I don't think so. I think when you make offerings, you should be happy and rejoice in the fact that you're being generous and kind. And then when the monks chant the anumodana, receive the anumodana, other people are feeling joy with your goodness. I don't think you should be on bended knee begging for forgiveness all of the time. In fact, I would probably find that annoying if you were my student. So you're saying, not again. It's like, you actually do something wrong before you ask forgiveness. I mean, no. Don't do anything wrong. Please. No. We do it at certain times. Yeah. Teacher's birthdays is one time. Songkran New Year is a good time. And the monks do it among themselves at the end of the rainy season retreat. There's certain times in the year, a few times a year. Keep wiping the slate clean. So I hope that was helpful to you.